Welcome into our second annual Rivermen Day. This one a lot different than the last one. It's all virtual, but we're happy to be here. We're celebrating the history of professional hockey in Peoria this year all day long. And what better way to start it out than with the current head coach of the SPHL Peoria Rivermen. You've known him from his playing days there. He's a Rivermen Hall of Famer and a whole lot more that we're going to get into. Jean-Guy Trudel, live from the Owen Center. Coach, Guy, how's it been, man? It's been a while since I've seen you. I didn't think the next time was going to be over a computer screen, but here we are.
Hey, I miss you, Mossy. No, it's been tough days, but fortunately enough, we still have my junior team going on, so I feel like I'm still staying sharp there, helping out Steve Ortman and Blake Ortman, the coaches here for the Mustangs. So staying sharp that way, coaching wise, and as a coach, you always got to try to learn different things. So I've been studying the game as much as I can and watching as much hockey as I can, and still recruiting for the Rivermen. So hopefully we do have a season next year, and we can keep going, because it's been rough that way. I think it's more like where you're so used to a routine as a coach. You have your everyday routine. You do all the same things all the time, all summer. Recruitment wise, this was just like to be honest with you, just a crazy year of doing nothing. And like I said, luckily I have the Mustangs to keep me going, because it would have been really tough not to have hockey at all.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're going to kind of jump around a little bit in this interview, because you've still got work to do with the Mustangs, the playoff-bound Mustangs now. At the time of this recording, I'm pretty sure they're 21-6-2. So I think while the Rivermen is a bittersweet thing without being able to play, you got to take a lot of pride in your kids there at the junior level.
Yeah, we love our team, and for us, it's a little bit different here. It's about development and winning. So development first. So it's a different brand of hockey, but it's, I always say it's just a little younger than the Rivermen. I mean, they have the same, aspiration to play at NCAA level, and they're hardworking kids. And I think, it's a little bit like I do with my Rivermen. You build, I believe that recruitment is the most important part of any organization. When they walk in the door, the type of people they are. And we're lucky enough this year with the Mustangs, we got great kids that want to work hard, and we're trying to build it in the Rivermen way a little bit with, you start with that foundation. Once you have that, it's easier to teach coachable kids that want to learn and get better every day.
Well, that foundation is a little hand in hand with guys like Mitch McPherson and Alec Hageman, who have graduated from the Mustangs, and when you know it, they end up being Rivermen players. Coach, you mentioned development there, and it doesn't stop at the junior or collegiate level. It goes into the pro level, and your ultimate goal to get to the NHL. One day, many, many years ago, you were one of those kids who eventually finds your way into pro hockey. You start out early in the mid to late 90s. San Antonio Rampage, I believe, in the IHL. And then you played in Peoria, a couple years in the ECHL, one later in the A, which we'll talk about. But Peoria, I mean, you had one season where it was 113 points in 62 games. I mean, you were killing it at the ECHL level. So go back to that year if you can. You're developing, and the development is going at a rapid pace. What do you remember about that year? I want to say it was 97, 98 in the ECHL with the Rivermen. Where was your confidence? 113 in 62 games is no easy feat.
Yeah, I think it started major junior. My last 2 years, I was lucky enough. I had this coach, Robert Munger. I was a little crazy, but I think he taught me to become a complete player, and he pushed us every day. And we talk about the ceiling all the time. He wanted to see each player's ceiling to make sure we play at the highest level we possibly can. And after that, I felt like when I got to the pro level, through Robert and major junior playing, we won the cup. You play 100-some games a year, so you're kind of used to that pro mentality already when you leave major junior. And I think the transition was pretty easy to ECHL, because I feel like major junior ECHL is same type of level. I mean, and then after that, I think when I graduated to the next levels, it was a little tougher. But that year in Peoria, I think it started also with the way we were a team. We were from organization-wide. Mr. Sowers, they treated you like men. They took care of you. They made you feel comfortable in the city of Peoria, and you wanted to play for that jersey. So right away, they made you comfortable, and I think we had a lot of success as a team. And like me, when you have success as a team and you win a lot of hockey games, individual accolades are going to come. You're going to get your points. You're going to do what you need to do to have success individually. But it all started here with feeling comfortable. And I think a lot of what I do as a coach is pretty much based on that. I remember Mr. Sowers after every single game was downstairs shaking hands, making sure we felt comfortable being there. And I think that's where I started to, understanding how important everybody in an organization is. And that's how you win a lot of hockey games. So, but that year was just a special year surrounded by great teammates. I mean, we were a very, very good hockey team. And it was a little bit rough leaving, but like everybody else, I had a dream of make it at the highest level I could. And, I followed my path that I had to. It takes you all over the place, but it was special. And I always remember the work ethic I got from guys like the Cable brothers and guys I played with, that unbelievable professionals. Like, and, when you're young, 20, 21, you're not always thinking of, just being that professional. You want to have your fun also. But I think they turned me around and actually made me the professional I was later on in my career.
You talked about your coach in Major Junior, of course, Bruce Sowers, the owner of the Rivermen at the time, and then the Cable brothers. So that kind of leads me and those guys in particular. You talk about being comfortable from the players' perspective. Who are some of the players that you remember that come to mind when you think that those guys made it a comfortable place for me to play?
All of them. I remember my first year, I was the only French kid. And it was tough. My English wasn't, great. So I came, it wasn't pretty much non-existent, came in, and those guys took me in just like, one of theirs. And all those veterans, I remember Dougie Evans that played 400 games in the NHL. And then you had the Cable brothers, Dan Hodge, all those old names, Darren Maloney, we came in together. And I think we had a great mix of veteran players, but also all first-year players. So it made it easy for everybody to kind of got together. And I truly believe in having a great locker room to win a lot of games. And we did. I mean, everything we did was together. We had an absolute blast. And I think those veterans like Dougie Evans, I was lucky enough to play on his line those 2 years in Peoria, and made my job a lot easier, since I felt like at that time I wasn't the complete player I wanted to be. I think I was very adequate offensively. I think defensively, I had some areas I had to get better, but with him being a centerman and taking, I think, the bulk of the responsibility defensively, made me kind of a little bit freer on the ice to just do my thing and have fun. And he always encouraged me to just go get it offensively to make sure that I can move up level. So he was great for me and a great centerman to start my career with.
We talked about, or some of the guys you mentioned there, one of them being Dan Hodge. We'll actually have him on later on today for Riverman Day. But, another great player from the ECHL days, recent Hall of Fame inductee, J.F. Boutin. And I was talking to him last year at the game that he was being inducted at, and he was looking down at the ice, and this ended up being the last weekend of, the SPHL Rivermen to date, and saying, there wasn't a lot of differences when he looked down there and saw the SPHL in 2020 versus the ECHL maybe in the mid-90s. Now, everybody's going to have a different opinion about that, and the game has certainly changed. But, Coach, I'm curious, where do you stand on that? The SPHL is this basically single A development league, and sometimes it doesn't get all the credit it probably deserves. It's come a long way since the Rivermen even were starting in this league 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think the first 2-3 years I was coaching the SPHL, I don't think we were quite the ECHL of those days. But I think in my last 4 or 5 years, I think the SPHL did a lot of big strides. We went away from that kind of goon type of league to, a hockey type of league that, and I think players are starting to understand that development starts at the A level sometimes. And, sometimes guys just fall to cracks and you have to start at that level. And I think we're getting a lot more talented players to come to our level. I'm okay with JF saying that, because I felt the same way in 90s ECHL to today's SPHL. I think you maybe had a little bit more depth here and there in ECHL of those days, because you would get guys from the AHL, of course. But I don't think the difference was that big. I think maybe 1 or 2 IN players, and that's about it. Everything else, the speed-wise, we know the game got faster over the years. Yeah. So speed-wise, I'd say it's pretty much the same.
And continuing on your Rivermen career individually, you had a couple of really great years in Peoria, but those were in the ECHL days. And then you went on, continued your career, a lot of AHL time, multi-time AHL All-Star, Calder Cup champion. And then later in your career, you come back to Peoria, this time in AHL City in 07-08, put up 67 points in 78 games. But, Coach, I'm curious, as we know the history of the Rivermen like we do today, the AHL era was it's not regarded as highly as the ECHL. Of course, the coast teams were more competitive. They won championships. The AHL team struggled to get in the playoffs. But for you, do you remember going back that year? Did it feel different at all?
It did, to be honest with you. When I
10 years
left,
had passed.
yeah, when I left the AHL to go to Switzerland, I felt like the AHL was still a little bit old school, meaning professionals would show you the way. I mean, older players, the guys that have been around for a long time would show you the way. There was a type of respect between older players, respecting those older players for what they did and it kind of changed a little bit. I think the AHL became really, really young. So I think it was just an extension of Major Junior and, guys that were drafted. But I think it was just the extension of Major Junior. So when I came back, I felt like we probably had 2 or 3 older guys, and the rest were actually all coming out of Major Junior or 1 year in. And it was a lot younger mentality than when I left the AHL. The speed was fast, but I didn't think the hockey was as smart as when we left, when guys were older, maybe a little slower, but a lot smarter in everything they did and a lot more physical in everything they did. And then, of course, the strike of 2004 changed a lot of our rules. So hockey became a lot faster, a lot less physical. And I think it was adjustment when I came back just for that part. I think the respect factor was a little bit gone since the league was so young and there wasn't that many old guys anymore. So it was a little bit different that way. And I think coaching wise was also difference between when I left, because when I left the organization I played with, Houston, Springfield, all it was is we wanted to win no matter what at all costs. When I came back to the AHL, all they wanted was their prospects to get developed. Win or lose, they didn't care. They had set rosters, a coach before the game. They knew who they're going to play on the power play and everything else. So it was kind of a different feel. It wasn't always about winning. And I think that's the biggest problems we had with the fans or our record. I think it was more about developing the young prospects, not the interaction with the fans or bringing winning products to the fan. And I think that's why the disconnection kind of happened a little bit in Peoria.
I'm curious if it changed your plan too, because you mentioned you were in Switzerland for a couple years. That 07-08 season in Peoria would wind up being your last as a player in North America. You went back to Switzerland for a couple years before ultimately retiring. But when you came back to Peoria in 07, did you have a different expectation going in and maybe even coming out that you were going to stay in the AHL and that was where you would end your career?
I was coming back, to be honest with you. I never really got a chance in the NHL. I got a cup of coffee, but never really got a chance to play the amount of minutes I wanted to play, or maybe get a chance on the power play, which was one of my strengths. And, as an offensive player, you get one power play in the first period, you gain a lot of confidence from it. And then after that, you kind of go on your game and have a great game. It's funny how it works for offensive players that way. And I never really got a chance in the NHL to play those type of minutes or those situations that I wanted to feel, feel like
Right.
I had a chance to play. So I wanted to come back and maybe just get, a 5. My brain was, maybe if I can get called up 5 or 6 games, and they just give me a chance to kind of show. Because at the time I was 29, 30, and I still felt like I was playing some great hockey. I felt like my legs were feeling great. And when I came back, unfortunately, it was just a different situation. We had a veteran problem in Peoria. I got sat out a few games. Kids were playing in all kinds of situations that personally, as a coach, I wouldn't have played them to make sure we win hockey games. But again, it was about developing the kids and not exactly winning. So I struggle with that year because the way I work, the competitive guy in me, I always say every game has its story and you got to win that story no matter what. And I didn't feel like we were pushing enough to win. So I didn't know what was going to happen the year after. I was coming that year to try to get a few games in the NHL and show people what I can really do.
I think if we had more time, I would go another hour with you about these things. But to kind of jump a little bit, you retire in 2010, come back to the States, you go to Peoria, you end up working with the Mustangs. And then as you're coaching with the Peoria Mustangs in the NA3HL, at some point a call comes along that you're going to be the 2011 Rivermen Hall of Fame inductee. Who called you and how did that conversation go?
Well, I got a few phone calls that day, but to me, Dave Aminion was probably the most, I knew Dave for a long time. Mm-hmm. So when he called, it made it kind of special. And to be honest with you, the best thing I remember of being inducted into the Hall of Fame those calls were great, but it was the first time that my old man actually came to one of my pro things. He never came to one of my pro hockey games ever, my
Really?
dad. And I remember he traveled all the way from back home, took him, 20 hours in a car, got here, and he was here for that night for the Hall of Fame. So I think that's what I remember the most is my father being able to come and support me in one thing, because he came to one major junior game in my life. I played 5 years, and then he never came to one pro game. So to have him there for my, he's old school. So to have him there for my Hall of Fame night was really special.
That's amazing. That really is cool. And I want to ask you too, as we're, going to unpack some of the good and some of the bad. Okay. So that's 2011. Now we're 2 years before the Rivermen and the AHL part ways for good. My understanding of the conversation is that the SPHL coming to Peoria was like never discussed. Like that was not known. All that was known was the Blues were pulling out of Peoria. And I'm wondering a couple things. Did you start hearing rumblings in advance of that announcement? And whether the answer is yes or no, when it came down? I mean, yeah, you're with the Mustangs. You'd already been inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm not sure where your ties were with the Rivermen at that point, but I imagine, as a player that city took you in, that had to feel a certain way, that 31 years of hockey was expected to be no more.
Yeah, that was you could hear it in newspapers, but to be honest with you, I was not involved personally with anything Rivermen. I was part owner of the Mustangs. Me and Steve Ortman and Kevin Tucker were running the team at the Mustangs. We had a lot of success together there, and Rivermen had nothing to do. Of course, in the newspaper, you would read that, when the AHL left, we knew that. And then after that, I think it became a date thing and a money thing, of course, with the ECHL, a little too late in the season. And then, when you crunch numbers and how much, the old owners of the ECHL or owners right now are losing yearly. I think that kind of went into effect. And I think the SPHL was a league that really wanted to, there was a building momentum. It was coming, coming fast, furious, new rules. People are starting to love it. And I think when Bart decided to take over and jump in there. And even then when I heard we were going to the SPHL from the newspapers, I never thought I was going to be a coach. Like for me, I was lucky enough in my career, financially I did okay. So I was coaching the Mustangs, having fun, getting involved in youth hockey. My son was playing hockey. So for me, I never thought, okay, I'm going to go coach the Rivermen, until I got a phone call from Bart saying he wanted to meet me at a restaurant. And then I kind of figured it was probably about that. And until I got there, and, I thought I was going to have to go through a big interview, or whatever. And Bart already knew what he wanted. And, it pretty much got done in one day. And then it was just negotiating the salary. But no, I did not know anything about the Rivermen. And I was, to be honest with you, looking forward to the next year with the Mustangs, just trying to, keep building that program. And I was fortunate enough. I think it was, the last 8 years is just great experiences that, you can't, those are things that, they're not expected, but when they come, you truly appreciate it. And I was lucky enough when Bart hired me, I'll always remember he showed me my office, Mossy, and it was bare. There was nothing left in there. And he's like, yeah, good luck, kid. And I had no idea about the SPHL. I had no idea about pro hockey. I had nothing. And me and Kevin Tucker just sat in the office and started building everything. And what a great experience and a great learning tool to have for the future when, starting new organizations.
You turned out to make the right decision. You're the winningest coach in Rivermen history. And Coach, as we wind down, I probably have two more questions for you. Sorry to keep you, but I want to know, the first thing with the SPHL is we mentioned earlier how it's grown a lot from, as you called it, it was kind of a goon league. That was sort of the rep it had. So how hard was it coaching those first couple of years? Two-piece sticks, things like that too had to be interesting.
Yeah, it was, I think the most frustrating is at some point it was a little dangerous for players. And you know me, how much I love my players. Like they become part of my family. That's what I was getting the most frustrated, because when you just retired, you still have the blood boiling a little bit when the game starts. It's a little different than now how I feel when the game starts compared to 8 years ago when I took over. Like you wanted to do something for your players, but there's really nothing you could do. And I think, you know, the ownership group, myself, and we just jumped in the league that we had no idea it was going to be two pieces. We had no idea about, you know, we just kind of jumped in the league and went at it. So there was a lot of obstacles, but to be honest with you, I think the league started even that year doing a better job at protecting our players, protecting our product. And I think that's why the league is where it's at today. I mean, it's now, if somebody would have asked me 8 years ago, is it a developmental league? I would have probably said no. But I truly believe now it is. I truly believe guys can come there, get way better, and become regulars in ECHL or even get to the AHL level, which we had a few players get there. So I honestly believe now it's completely changed.
We've talked about it as we come to the end of this interview. You've accomplished so much. And how about ceremonies? We've seen so many of them. You as a player had seen, you know, players of the past coming in for these Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, you yourself getting one. And then last year, the brief ceremony with the framed jersey signed by your team to commemorate your 234th win, cementing you as the winningest coach of all time. You know, it's one of those things where as you count the brass rings, how many are left? I would guess there's maybe only one more ceremony you really are looking to have inside that building, and it's winning a President's Cup.
Yeah, I've been chasing that for quite a few years, and I'm not going to stop working until we get it. And hopefully, like I said, you know, you never know as a coach. I always say you get hired to get fired. So we, you know, hopefully I can keep the job and keep going. And that's all I want right now is bring a championship to Peoria. I not only to our players that we love, like you know how we are around our players. You've been with us on the bus and how much we love our kids. But I think to our great fans in Peoria. I mean, they've been patient. I honestly didn't think it was going to take that long. I think we had 3 finals in a row that you know, you always think that's going to be the moment. But, you know, we're just going to keep working towards that goal because I really want to bring one to Peoria. And then I think I'm going to feel a lot better myself. It's still bothering me every single day that we didn't get a chance to live that cup in Peoria. We had plenty of trophies in Peoria with our first place and all those kind of President's Trophy, but we want the big one. We want to bring it to Peoria. The fans deserve it. I think an ownership group deserve it. So you know, I'm going to keep working hard towards that goal. But again, you know, like I told you about the earlier, like when we were having fun about the jersey and the 234 wins, it's a team thing. I think we're going to have that special team come all together, office staff, trainers, everybody, and have great players that are ready to do whatever it takes for the city of Peoria and bring the championship home. So, yeah, that's all that's left that I want to bring to this great city of Peoria. And hopefully, like I said, we have a season next year and start working towards that goal this summer with the recruiting. Because like I told you, I believe that in any company, recruiting is the most important thing, the type of people you bring in the office. And starting from new pretty much this year with not having a season, it's going to be a big job this summer.
Yeah, it's going to be a heck of a job that you're going to be tasked with. In the short term, I think bringing a cup to the Mustangs is probably the top priority. But after that, hopefully we get back to the Rivermen. Coach Jean-Guy Trudel, thank you so much for your time. It's great to see you again, and thank you for doing this on Rivermen Day. I'm sure the fans will love it.
Thanks, Mossy. Miss you, buddy. Love you, big guy.